day at the Academy of Scholars. Welcome to another episode of Scholarly Speaking Live with Dr. Stacy Lambert-Johnson, the Director of Student Success at the Academy of Scholars. I am Benny Crane Jr., the Assistant Director of Student Success. Today's topic will discuss today's generation. Are they different?
Thank you for joining us for today's live session. No matter where you're joining us from, whether you're at work or at home, we pray that you're having a great AOS day and hope that you can visit us here on campus someday soon. Last week, we talked about how we talk to our children matters. I received a lot of feedback from our parents on last week's episode.
Yes.
Good stuff.
Yes.
This week, we're talking about what, if anything, is different about today's generation. But before we get started, Benny, where can our viewers watch today's live session once it's over?
Well, everything from this show ends up on our website, academyofscholars.com, including both the audio and video versions. If you prefer watching us, you can find the video version on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and Instagram. If you like listening to podcasts on your drive to work like I do, you can download the audio version anywhere you download your favorite podcast. We want to take this opportunity to say hello to all the people who are joining us live today. Also, shout out to the people who follow us on our social media platforms. We appreciate you joining us. Now, just do us a favor. Tell your friends we're on. All you have to do is hit that share button right there. Comment and tell us about the things you've noticed about kids these days. Do you think they're different from kids in your generation? If you do, how so? Tell us. We want to know.
So Benny, I selected today's topic for our live discussion because of a phone call that I received from my older brother about a week ago.
Okay.
He called me one evening and he wanted me to talk to his 16-year-old daughter on the topic of privacy.
Oh.
He wanted me to tell her that there is no such thing as privacy for children when they live in their parents' house. Apparently she's demanding some privacy and he wanted me to co-sign on his stance, but I couldn't, okay? I reminded him that even though we grew up with parents with that school of thought and we didn't rebel, that today's generation is a lot different. I told him that unless his daughter had given him a reason not to trust her, that he should indeed give her some privacy within reason. Needless to say, I don't think he'll be calling me anymore for some advice. But as I thought about it some more, I had to ask myself, is today's generation of kids really that different from other generations? And if so, why? So that's what we'll explore today.
These kids today, I tell you, says every old person ever.
Right.
People act like the nature of children or human beings changes because of the year they were born, and it really hasn't, even though the circumstances of when they grew up did. People act like children just started saying no to adults starting in 2022. No, children always said no.
Right.
And the reason we don't know that is because we don't remember being two. Now, different generations of parents may have responded to children saying no differently, and as a result, each generation grows up differently. But the nature of human beings and the development of our brains, which ultimately determines the decisions we make, is largely unchanged.
That's true. Benny, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, especially about millennials, but also about today's generation, we're doomed if we have to depend on them for our future. But the reality of it is that millennials, just like any other generation, including today's generation, have both strengths and weaknesses.
Yes.
In addition, each generation has experienced different events that have shaped them and influenced them the way that they respond to different situations. They're influenced by those events and their parental upbringing.
And that upbringing and the events of the generation's lifetimes impacted how they operated. And it'll be the same for this current generation. And here's something that might be surprising. We're actually 2 generations beyond millennials. So stop blaming everything on millennials, Gen Xers.
Yeah, it seems like we're stuck on millennials. So let's talk about those different generations. Scholars, teachers, parents, grandparents, uncles, and aunts. See if you recognize yourself as we discuss each generation. Traditionalists are the generation that was born before 1945.
Yes.
This generation was shaped by the stock market crash, World War II, big bands, swing music, Duke Ellington, Frank Sinatra, to name a few.
I did it my way. That's the only Frank Sinatra song I know.
You know, me too. Cool it on the singing. War songs became popular, and so did FM broadcasting, as the period from 1920 to 1950 became known as the golden age of radio, in which comedies, dramas, variety shows, game shows, and popular music shows drew millions of listeners across America. The experiences of this generation taught them to value perseverance, determination, hard work, patriotism, education, and courage.
The traditionalist generation was also known as the silent generation because as a generation, they didn't think that they got too involved in politics and boycotting and things like that. Time magazine published an article in 1951 that said the most startling thing about their generation was their silence, hence the silent generation. Now, it turned out that years later that Time couldn't have been more wrong about this group because it was this group of people that was the generation that led the civil rights movement. Think of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Muhammad Ali. That's why you cannot judge an entire generation based upon what you see from them when they're young.
Right.
Now, I imagine that Time may have used a different year marker for the silent generation in 1928, which would have meant kids like Dr. King would have only been 12, but they would have still not been much older than that. And this is the generation that would end up changing the world.
That's right. Now, the next generation, known as the baby boomers, were born between 1945 and 1964. This generation experienced prosperity, but were also shaped by the Vietnam War, the Cold War, the building of the Berlin Wall, the birth of rhythm and blues, and rock and roll with singers such as Ray Charles, Elvis Presley, Little Richards, Fats Domino, and Dinah Washington, to name a few.
I can't sing.
No. Stick to your day job. The television became more popular in households during this generation, and they were exposed to advertisers trying to make a profit by advertising to this group. The experiences of this generation taught them that success required more than just education and hard work. They realized the need for social change. This generation witnessed and participated in the civil rights movement.
For context, baby boomers are between the ages of 58 and 76 years old right now. So for all you young folks out there calling people boomers, keep this in mind the next time you call somebody that.
They use that? They say that?
Yeah, young people will call you a boomer. But remember, someone has to be between 58 and 76 to be a boomer. But anyway, so if you're like me and Stacy, you were raised by a baby boomer, not a baby boomer.
Right.
Now, researchers contend that they raised their children with a focus on wanting the best for them and making sure that their children went to college was a priority. And baby boomers could not be more different from the silent generation who raised them, which played out in their parenting styles. This was the first generation that actually cared about their children's perspective and how their kids felt growing up.
Except my parents. They could care less about my perspective.
But I think some of that has to be with your growing up in the islands.
Yeah.
Because parents here, they had to kind of change. Because when late baby boomers were raising their kids, things happened that changed the way you parented. You had the missing and murdered children in Atlanta in 1979 through 1981. The Tylenol scare in 1981 when they put cyanide in Tylenol. The Girl Scout cookie contamination where people were putting foreign objects like pins in Girl Scout cookies. Now, before the Tylenol and Girl Scout situation, the stuff we bought wasn't even sealed. We just bought it and ate it. Parents started paying more attention to where their children were, who they were around, and started trusting other people less.
Okay. The next generation, Generation X, was born between 1965 and 1980. This is the absolute best generation.
It is.
This generation was perfect and could do absolutely no wrong.
Nothing.
Okay. I'm just joking, and yes, this is my generation and Benny's generation. This generation was exposed to television in the home and were considered latchkey children as families became dual earners, or children were raised by single parents who worked away from the home. This generation was shaped by the evolution of disco, pop, and rap, along with layoffs and the war on drugs. Seeing the hard work and lack of happiness experienced by many of their parents, some in this generation decided to focus more on family and free time than career. Divorce became commonplace, and Generation X was the first era where having divorced parents was normal. It wasn't strange or bad, it was just a fact of life. For the most part, Generation X responded to this by staying married. More people put off marrying or decided not to marry at all. But once they said I do, Gen Xers remained married at higher rates than baby boomers. Now, this generation valued the importance of balancing family with career.
Yes. Gen Xers are between 42 and 57 right now, and we're the first generation of helicopter parents.
Yep.
Just drop down for anything. Gen Xers are all about parenting. They are a generation that focuses on learning about parenting and caring about the work-life balance. They understand the importance of individualism and tend to support their children's choices for different lifestyles more than past generations. So it's no wonder why many of our topics on Scholarly Speaking focus on understanding children and good parenting, because it's two Gen Xers sitting here.
That's right. Now, millennials were born between 1981 and 1996. I have two millennials. This generation saw the evolution of hip hop as a genre of music, along with computers, social media, and technological advancement never seen during their parents' and grandparents' youth. They have witnessed terrorism and school shootings, and a large number come from divorced homes. This generation stays wired as technology brings the world to their homes or anywhere they may be. This generation is also characterized by having a varied playlist of different genres of music. Their experiences cause them to have more fear and anxiety than previous generations, but at the same time, they have shown courage, advocating for women's issues, the rights of minorities, the Me Too movement, gun control, and other social and political issues.
And hey, everybody, a lot of people talk about millennials like they're young people, but millennials are not young anymore.
They're grown up.
The youngest of them are 26, and the oldest of them are in their early 40s. Yes, millennials are in their 40s now. Think about that. So they are raising children. In fact, most of our parents, Stacy, are millennials.
That's right.
So I guess I need to tread lightly here. Millennials are having fewer children and are less likely to feel the need to be married to have kids. Technologically, the internet and social media are all major influencers in their lives as parents and in the lives of their children. So we get to see the children of millennials grow up because they're showing us on everything like on IG and Facebook. Now, this is an open-minded generation of parents who are parenting in various styles that were not common to generations before.
That's right.
They may have been the children of helicopter parents, so they're finding themselves to be naturally freer parents in their approach compared with older generations.
That's true. Generation Z was born between 1997 and 2012 and is so far the most wired generation in history, and they're called digital natives. This generation witnessed domestic terrorism, the war on Afghanistan, smartphones, the Great Recession, text messaging, gun violence and school shootings, and the election of Barack Obama. This generation easily and quickly used technology to find information. As a result, they are perceived as being impatient. This generation is also exposed to the daily barrage of news media reporting on violence and the overstimulation of video games. I have a grandson in this generation. They are well versed in technological advancements and are seemingly good at multitasking and gathering information quickly. They are also experiential learners, learning best by doing, not by hearing or seeing.
Yes, people who are part of Gen Z can be as old as 25 years old now, or as young as 10. So that means our 4th and 5th graders are our last of Gen Zers in the building. I have 2 Gen Z children myself. They never knew a life without a cell phone,
Imagine
which is
that.
just crazy to me. Of course, they're too young for us to have an understanding of what kind of parents they'll be, but we do know that they grew up or are growing up in a more diverse world, and I hope this shapes them for the better.
That's true. Now, finally, Generation Alpha. This generation was born between 2012 to 2025, so some of them are still yet to be born,
Yes.
and are currently aged 0 to 9. I have a 4-year-old grandson in this generation. The jury is still out on this generation because it is the current generation. But what we know so far about this generation is that they may well be the most wired generation of all time.
Yes.
This generation is being raised with Alexa and Siri, smart speakers and smart devices everywhere. Technology is everywhere, at home, at school, in the car, you name it. Generation Alpha have experienced a global pandemic and experts are still determining the social and psychological impact it will have on them in the future. This is the first generation of virtual learners, thanks to the pandemic,
Yes.
and the first generation to experience a shift in work from home opportunities, also thanks to the pandemic. Alphas of the true digital natives, with their parents accessing 4D images of them prior to their birth. Alphas are expected to be one of the most highly educated and wealthy generations, becoming more and more disconnected from the idea of cash and utilizing more paperless transactions. This is the generation of children that we currently work with,
Yes.
Benny, at our school. And Benny, I don't know about you, but based on my daily interactions with our scholars, I can say that their futures are bright.
Yes.
And no, we are not doomed. This generation will be known for their strength in the face of adversity, their courage and flexibility, their drive and determination, and their ingenuity and perseverance. We know this because we see it every day.
Yeah, we're in good hands.
Yes. Well, what do you think? How is today's generation different from your generation? How do you think the events of today's generation will impact them in the future? Did you learn something new from today's episode? Comment and let us know your thoughts on today's topic.
Yes, please comment. Shout out to Lisa Bennett McCall, who commented on last week's episode. We love it when you comment. And if you're looking for more information to help you understand today's generation, go to our website at academyofscholars.com/scholarly speaking resources. In the meantime, we suggest you check out Modern Parents, Vintage Values by Sissy Goff and Melissa Trevathan. This is a Christian faith-based book that offers parents a roadmap on raising today's generation of children to have values that are built upon an unshakable foundation of faith and hope. And it discusses topics like, what's the magic age for giving children their first cell phone? And when's the magic age to give them their first social media account? And remember, no matter where you live in the world, you can give your child access to an exceptional Christian affordable education with the Academy of Scholars Premier Online Learning. Not only does the Academy of Scholars give your child the opportunity to engage in school at their own pace, but we also provide a comprehensive curriculum with classes like coding and computer science that give your child an opportunity to be excited about school each day. The Academy of Scholars Premier Online Learning is the online school you've been looking for.
I hope you enjoyed today's live session. To learn more about our amazing school, the Academy of Scholars, please go to our website at academyofscholars.com. Join us next time as we continue our live discussions. Next week, we'll be talking about deterring your child from negative influences.
That sounds good.
Good one. Until next time, I am Dr. Stacy Lambert-Johnson.
And I'm Benny Crane Jr.
Saying
Goodbye.
goodbye and